Friends, I would like to start by saying what a pleasure it is to be here at this wonderful conclave, the India 2.0 Rebooting to the Meta Era. And let me start by saying that it is such an exciting thought to reimagine how technological change will fundamentally impact our lives. And given this opportunity, I'd obviously like to focus on health technology, where I do believe that the convergence of many technologies is going to revolutionize India's healthcare system over the next 25 years. The application of Industry 4.0, such as, of course, data science, AI, ML, robotics, IoT, automation, blockchain, cloud computing, AR, VR, 3D printing, etc., are really driving transformational change in healthcare. And the adoption of these cutting-edge technologies will help us to solve some of the greatest challenges that we have in delivering quality, portability, and most of all, affordability in healthcare in our country. What is very exciting is the combining of information technology and life sciences in spearheading a future where India can actually leapfrog many other nations in terms of quality of care and, of course, achieving the much-needed vision of universal healthcare. My vision for India in 2047 thus envisages a healthcare landscape which is both advanced but most of all affordable. Not for the few, but for the masses. Not just for India, but for the world. I foresee a future where a focus on preventive healthcare will proactively prevent illness and bring down the burden of disease. Where predictive healthcare will substitute the need for emergency interventions. Where personalized patient solutions will form the crux of all therapeutic endeavors, and where medtech innovation will drive the last mile delivery of comprehensive care. I also want to say that it will be public-private partnerships that will ensure inclusivity and universal access to healthcare. So I do imagine and envisage India in 2047 where transformed healthcare will have truly transformed lives. Let me start by saying that the COVID-19 pandemic was a very important inflection point in healthcare in our country. It unleashed innovation at a scale that we have never seen before. I'll give you some really interesting examples. So let's start with the e-Sanjeevani telemedicine service that you'll be very interested to know crossed a milestone of 3 crore teleconsultations in March 2022. It is now approaching the 2 lakh consultations a day milestones. Now, this could have never been imagined in the pre-pandemic world. But the pandemic changed the way we look at telemedicine. The INSACOG, or the Indian SARS-CoV-2 Genomics Consortium, has sequenced over 2 lakh SARS-CoV-2 genomes as of March 2022. And I can tell you this number will be even greater when you involve the private sector genomic sequencing laboratories. We have never sequenced so many genomes ever before. And so this tells you what the potential of genomic sequencing is in our country. Recent advances in AI applications have enabled clinicians to rapidly interpret radiological data that is generated from X-rays, CT scans, and the like, and translate it into almost real-time diagnosis. And as many of you know, it was this technology, these algorithms, this AI-based algorithms that allowed us to quickly scan CTs and read out that data and see how severe the disease was, the COVID-19 impact was on patients in terms of their lung impact. Over 80% of healthcare professionals in the world, in the country rather, are using electronic health records in their practice. And this, of course, is leading to better quality of care and patient outcomes. What is also very important is how we have started adopting portable diagnostics and medtech devices on smartphones, on tablets, and handheld devices and wearables that are enabling our frontline health workers and technicians to identify anomalies for early detection of diseases such as breast and oral cancers. I can tell you that without all of us realizing it, there is a revolution taking place when it comes to medtech. And I can tell you that we will have many unicorns born out of this very city, which will actually be based on many of these data-led digital devices, which are really being used extensively in healthcare. Most recently, many of you might have heard of FHIR, or the Fast Healthcare Interoperability Resources. This is an indigenously developed technology to exchange electronic health records and unlock silos. As you know, one of the biggest challenges all over the world has been about interoperability of health data. Health data has always been coveted by healthcare providers in silos. These silos never talk to each other. And we are therefore losing the power of interoperability and access to health data in terms of real-time access. India has that opportunity of having a unified health interface where we can create that database, that platform that provides access and portability and interoperability. This is the power of technology that India has an opportunity to unleash and for others to emulate, like the way we've done it with the UPI or the Unified Payment Interface. And these examples that I've just talked about illustrate that we are at the cusp of an interesting revolution where the future of medicine and biotech belongs. So I just want to again talk about the fact that this pandemic has unleashed innovation at a mega scale that we have not realized and was possible. We've leveraged a robust information technology backbone to track and trace COVID-19 infections, create advanced databases and real-time dashboards to map the pandemic and deploy vaccines at unprecedented scale through platforms like CoWIN and Arogya Setu. In fact, I think India today can boast of having the most sophisticated and advanced harmonized vaccination platform that has captured possibly the world's largest database of vaccinations. And all this has been made possible because of the technologies that we have used in developing them and accessing the data through barcodes and QR codes, which I think no other country has done at the scale that India has done. And this is something I think we have to be agnostic about, because if we can do that for vaccinations, we can do that for any disease. That's the power of the CoWIN app that we need to leverage and apply. What I also think we need to do is to basically connect the dots. So we've, again, unfortunately run into silos of data collection. So we've got a fantastic Arogya Setu app that has collected volumes of data when it comes to RT-PCR tests. We've got the CoWIN app that has got this huge database of vaccinations. I mean, the kind of data we have is amazing because it tells you what kind of vaccine, when, how many doses, and the same way the RT-PCR test tells you which RT-PCR test you have conducted and where and when. And just combining that data will give you much deeper insights into how we've managed the disease so well. What is the level of reinfections? When do the reinfections happen? What is the period of passage of time before reinfections happen? After how many vaccinations, etc., etc. What I also want to think about is the commercial impact that the pandemic has unleashed. India's total pharmaceutical sector is estimated to have delivered close to $50 billion in size in a pre-pandemic level. During the pandemic, vaccines alone generated about $7 billion in terms of both domestic and export sales. What is even more staggering is that $10 billion were added to the Indian domestic market in just terms of diagnostic tests. This was the volume of diagnostic tests that we basically undertook, from just one RT-PCR test by NIV in Pune in January 2020 to nearly 1 billion tests by March 30th, 2022. So this has created this huge diagnostic market, which you can see has allowed us to manage that disease so competently. And then Indian industry also developed a large number of COVID-specific drugs, whether they were antivirals, whether they were specific antibodies targeting aspects of the disease. This also generated an additional $5 billion in sales in the domestic market and, of course, in export sales as well. For me, as a science-driven entrepreneur, over 100 clinical trials were approved in the country in 2021, which is the highest in a decade. And as these trials were conducted, we then realized that we had already created a $1 billion CRO sector in the country, which had been absent for so many years. And this also has added new capabilities of clinical research, which we need to build on going forward. So really, the pandemic was a very important inflection point in India to emerge as a global life sciences leader and establish Brand India. A Brand India that stands for innovation at scale, a Brand India that stands for affordable innovation, and a Brand India that stands for innovation that allows affordable access to any patient that needs it. That's what we did during this pandemic. And I think what was really a big eureka moment for us was that the pandemic alone created and added nearly a $25 billion market size to the pharma sector in this country. So this is something that we need to think about, saying, if we could add $25 billion to the pandemic, at the pandemic stage, what is it that we can do going forward in terms of our global opportunity? I think the world also has to understand that India and the Indian healthcare and pharma sector is a sector that innovates at scale, innovates with economies of scale, and innovates for the world, where the world is so challenged with healthcare costs that India is in a position to prove its dominance and its impact on global healthcare. That's the power of India. You may recall that the Union Budget 2022 earmarked genomics and pharma as sunrise sectors, and rightfully so, because this is where the future belongs. A greater understanding of biological sciences and the use of new technologies are enabling scientists to identify and develop what we refer to as targeted therapies. The concept of one-size-fits-all is quickly being replaced with personalized medicine. And the whole pharmaceutical industry is also being transformed from chemically synthesized drugs, which we refer to as small molecules, to biologically produced drugs, which are called large molecules or protein therapeutics. It is already well known that the pace of replacement of conventional drugs with biologic drugs is happening at a speed and scale that we also as a country can tap into. I'd just like to refer to my own company, Biocon, where we actually started our biopharma journey with a singular focus on one disease which was really challenging India at the turn of the century, which was diabetes. We were the diabetes capital of the world. We were importing all our insulins, and the most important and efficacious insulin, which was a biotech insulin called recombinant human insulin, was beyond the reach of most people in our country. It was simply not affordable. And most diabetics in our country who needed insulin had to, unfortunately, do with animal insulins. So we took it up as a challenge, and we decided, let's develop our indigenous recombinant human insulin using our own proprietary technology. And I'm very proud to say that today our company is the third largest producer of insulins in the world. And we are marketing these insulins to all countries in the world, including the US and Europe. In fact, we are the world's first interchangeable insulin that was approved by US FDA. That is the power of science that we have in this country. That's the power of our scientists that we have in our country, and we need to leverage them more. I'm particularly proud of the fact that we have disrupted the insulin pricing the world over. We have brought insulin prices crashing down to 1/10 of where they were. And we have very, proudly we can say that we have provided over 3 billion insulin doses to patients across the world. That is what I think India stands for, the scale and the economy of scale that can disrupt healthcare around the world. So I just want to say that the future of healthcare stands on 3 pillars: preventive healthcare, predictive healthcare, and personalized healthcare. And because of this forum where we are trying to reimagine what healthcare will look like in a technology-led India, let me take you through 3 examples of imagining or reimagining healthcare in 2047. Let's imagine a patient in a remote village in Ladakh who has a persistent cough. You launch an app on your smartphone and speak into it, and the app says, cough into this device. And using an AI-based screener as well as natural language processing algorithms, you are able to basically come to the conclusion that it could be COVID, it could be TB. But you actually need to then confirm what is this cough due to. So your app quickly actually sets up a doctor consultation using a scheduling engine which will check for a doctor's availability, a specialist's availability, either in the government or private healthcare sector using the Unified Health Interface and the Health Professionals Registry. Meanwhile, a doctor in New Delhi receives a notification from a UHI-registered platform, does a teleconsultation, does some initial investigations, and basically decides on a treatment paradigm where your drugs arrive by drone to your doorstep. So this is what is possible with technology in the future. The future is also about digital therapeutics that will actually personalize your dosages and tell you when to take the medicine. So I think these are very exciting opportunities for us to look at. And of course, what we are also very excited about is the advanced personalized medicines for cancer, which is already beginning to happen in India. Many of you would have heard about CAR T therapies, which is the autologous cell therapy where you use the patient's own T cells, engineer them, expand them, and put them back to kill those cancer cells. This is curing cancers, and I think this is the future of medicine. So I want to conclude by saying that we, as a country, must focus on advanced science, research, innovation, and this is not going to happen without political will and the entrepreneurial zest to make it happen. Today's interconnected world calls for partnerships and collaborations, and I do believe that India is in a position to forge very, very strong partnerships on the research front. Incremental steps will not make universal healthcare a reality for 1.5 billion people in a decade or even two. We need to approach it in mission mode with a lot of focus on research and innovation. The road is long, but we all have the ingredients that are required to succeed. We can be a scientific powerhouse of the world and create one of the greatest legacies for a healthy and prosperous future by the time we mark the centenary of India's independence. Let's commit ourselves to do it. Thank you and Jai Hind.